Hey yo, Chappelle Archie Gamble here in my new digs. Just got settled in over the last few days after moving 3 days ago. And I'm having a nice quiet night off after all of that moving and unpacking, setting up. And I gigged last night out of town. So I'm going to have a new vlog for you soon from my new apartment and new studio area over there. But I wanted to put something in here. It was a vlog that I filmed a couple of years back, actually, and it went into the vault. For some reason, it never aired. And it is about how the how they abolished compulsory military service in Britain, and how that affected British rock and roll, which in turn affected the British invasion. You'll see what I'm talking about when you watch. It's really, to me, an interesting topic. If you're a music fan, you'll enjoy it. Now I'm going to put that together right now, edit it, and post it online as I enjoy the rest of this night off. And I'm going to be getting back to the Gamble Ramble fresh content very soon, including a review of the warning show I intended last week. So I hope you enjoy this. Give it a whirl. If you're a music fan, I think you'll find it to be an interesting topic, and it's one I've never seen anyone cover before. So rock and roll, and thank you very much. This edition of the Gamble Ramble, with you as always, is myself, your host, Glenn Archie Gamble. Archie being a nickname that I've been saddled with for 35 fucking years and can't get rid of. My mother christened me Glenn, and Glenn I am, but that's cool. To my friends, I am Archie, and you are my friends. So, today's topic is about national service and its effect on rock and roll. To clarify, means national military service in Britain and how it affected the British invasion and music as we know it. And it's actually a huge part of the culture that I don't see a lot of people touch on. I've read, hundreds at least, if not over 1,000 books on rock and roll musicians. And it's a very important chapter in the history of rock and roll. So I'll elaborate a little on the term. So national service, first of all, is legally enforced military service. This existed in the UK from 1949 to 1960. So what that means is that every 18-year-old male had to do 2 years of compulsory military service once they turned 18. No getting around it unless you were disabled or, otherwise. So, basically what would happen was you would have these kids that were basically, they would go through school in the British version of high school, and then more or less just jump into 2 years of military training, and then they would come out, and you were an adult when you got out, 20 years old, and expected to marry and start your life. That was basically the tradition in the UK for a number of years. So, not conscription, sorry, we'll get to that. National service stopped in 1960. Okay? Now that date's very important to our timeline because a lot of the bands that formed the sound of the British invasion, Beatles, Stones, Who, Yardbirds, were formed in the early 1960s. So, we're going to go on and investigate how this affected things directly and indirectly. So, first of all, I want to say one thing. I want to take this shirt out. This is a famous poster of Keith Richards. Someone took a picture of Keith Richards on tour. I think it was the 74 tour of the Americas. They were at the border between Canada and the States, and they were being checked out. And Keith was standing under a poster. Patience, please. A drug-free America comes first. He's standing ironically under the poster because he was a major heroin junkie at the time. The Stones were all pretty much a big drug band. So I thought it was ironic that, to take a photo by that. So a pointless t-shirt up because it was custom made for me by Rhino Graphics. My buddy Brian Fogel at Rhino Graphics was kind enough to send me this. Now, this is the coolest thing about this. Brian gave me this as a gift. It's got the Gamble Ramble logo on the back. You can't see it, but it's full size. I sent some, I promoted his company a little bit and sent some business his way, and he was grateful and kind enough to send me this as a gift. He said, "Tell me what you want on a shirt, and I'll print it up for you." He did. It turned out fantastic. I love it. Thanks, Brian. So I'll put the website information on the description below. rhinographics.com, I believe, but the spelling is different. And I'll pop the logo up on the screen. Contact him for your shirt needs. He sells great Toronto 80s era, 80s, 90s era bar logo shirts, Gasworks, Rock and Roll Heaven, things like that, which I've shown you on other editions of the Ramble. The hat is from Carnival Legend, which is the ship I worked on, and definitely not a sponsor of the Gamble Ramble. So actually, I'll take, as I'm known to do, I'll wander and tell you a little side story about the hat. It's quick. So I worked for Carnival and did almost one full contract. I quit 7 weeks before the end. It was a nightmare of a company to work for. But on this ship, Legend, a beautiful ship. So the company used to have, they would have a cruise sale once a month or so. Basically at payday, they would close the shops, like after midnight. And the crew were allowed to come up into the passenger areas and shop and buy, jewelry, cologne, perfume, liquors, cigarettes, souvenirs at a reduced rate. So I was in the shop of the Carnival Legend, a beautiful ship, as I said, and I was picking up some fridge magnets for my mom and postcards and souvenirs and stuff. And I looked at the hat. I thought, that's pretty cool. I actually like the design of the hat. I thought my brother would like that, or maybe myself. I don't know. And as I was contemplating buying it, one of the kids that worked at the shop, I was calculating in my head how much money I could spend. Because I bought a model of the ship, too. Kid goes, "You like that hat?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "You gonna buy it?" I said, "I'm thinking about it. I'm not sure if I can afford it." He goes, "Just fucking take it." I go, "Why?" He goes, "I don't care. I hate this fucking company." Now, in all fairness, stealing is never right. I said, "Look, man, I don't want to get you in trouble." He goes, "Don't worry about it. They're not that careful with the stock. Just grab it. I don't care." So I grabbed it, and here it is. My stolen Carnival Legend. Contract may not have been much of a contract, but the memory will stay shitty forever. Okay, back to the topic at hand. So, as I said, national service in the UK military was compulsory from 1949 until 1960. At the age of 18, you had to do 2 years minimum. And as was the social norm at the time, after that you went on to get married after you did your compulsory military service, get a job, and then work that job, retire, get a gold watch, and die. So, what inspired this topic today was Bill Wyman of the Rolling Stones posted a Facebook posted. It was interesting, showing a picture of him in his national service, in his uniform from his army service. I'm going to use Google while we chat because I want to give you correct information. The kind of guy I am. So, Bill Wyman was the oldest of the Rolling Stones. He was significantly older than the rest of them. I think Bill today is, I think he's 82. And, so yeah, he was in the Royal Air Force, sorry. He was posted to Oldenburg in Germany. And, pretty interesting thing. If you go to Bill Wyman's page on Facebook, he talks about it. And, that's pretty cool stuff. So, here's the whole point of this. Bill Wyman is, I think it's 82, but I'm going to make sure, 84 years old, which is significant to our story. Because there was such an age difference between him and the rest of the Rolling Stones. None of them had to do national service, okay? Because they were just at the age of, in time in history, in 1960, when it was obliterated, they didn't have to go into the army. Now, what is the effect on music, you ask? I'm glad you asked, imaginary voice. this is what happened. As I said, it used to be that your life was mapped out in those days. My parents are both British. My father did national service. His brothers did national service. My uncles did national service. You had to do it. But by 1960, it was gone. So typically, the path of least resistance was, school, high school, the British equivalent, national service, find a bird, get married, settle down at the job, Once you eliminated national service from the picture, you've got all these 18-year-old kids that are artistic and musical. We don't have to go in the army like our parents did. Art college was the hugest thing. I cannot tell you the impact, the dynamic that art college in the UK had on the history of rock and roll. It's incredible. Members of the Stones, the Who, the Beatles, again, the Yardbirds, Jeff Beck, like all these bands you can think of, Jimmy Page, were either, featured members that went to art college or, were founded in art college. Glenn Matlock of the Sex Pistols, Vivian from the Slits, all this huge, up until the era of punk even. Even today, I'd imagine, I think someone like, the guy from Coldplay, Chris Martin, I believe, I could be speaking out of my ass, was an art school student. Tom York from Radiohead. Again, maybe I'm wrong. I'll check. So the point being is this: because national service was eliminated, kids got to hold on to their youth for a couple of years longer. Why art school, you might ask? Because it was, for some, if you're musically inclined or artistic or both, you're going to want to go to do something that's enjoyable. But it was also known as a very easy course. So you could get grants to go to art school with beautiful women around and artistic people and drugs and drinking and, bohemian lifestyle. Money to live on, money for school, money for books, money for, Mick Jagger was London School of Economics, but the Stones used a lot of his grant money to live on in the early days. It was basically another way of avoiding adulthood and adult obligations and responsibilities. So it was really interesting. So what happened was all these kids that were budding musicians who would have normally just joined the army, the guitar's a hobby, you'll never make any money off it. Quote, unquote, John Lennon's Aunt Mimi said that to him. The guitar's all well and good, John, but you'll never ever make a living at it. He had that carved on a plaque and given to her. She hung it in her living room for years. Just as an inside joke between them. But that was the way of thinking. Put the guitar down, put the toys away, grow up, be a man, do national service, start a family. That's gone now. So, what happens? You get all these people that are budding creative geniuses waiting to explode. And now they can. So they go to art school, and their day is, sleep a little late, get up, go do some drawing, some painting. I'm not saying there wasn't work involved. There was. Go to the pub, chat up some birds, smoke a spliff, go see a band. But the impact and influence was insanely huge. And this is really not really covered by rock historians. It's always bothered me. You would meet other types in your school who were also into rock and roll and music like you. Put a notice up on the board in the hallway. Musicians wanted to form bands. Voila, you've got the next, Pretty Things or whatever. So it was a great hothouse environment for young musicians to feel creative, be supported, and go on to become legends. Stuart Sutcliffe, the original bassist of the Beatles, was an art student. His influence on the Beatles was huge. He and Astrid Schurter, his first, I forgot her last name wrong, sorry about his girlfriend, she brought the fringe comb forward hairstyle to the Beatles. She was a beatnik. a lot of things it's, I'm going to gather my thoughts here because I get excited, and as you can see, I start to ramble from topic to topic, hence the name, the Gamble Ramble. But let's start by saying there's a difference between national service and conscription, aka the draft. Okay, so for example, America never had, as far as I know, America never had national service, compulsory military service. They did have the draft. Okay, now what would happen was like fuck me, what's the name of it? The Civil War, Vietnam War, when the armies were sending thousands of millions of kids to their death in Vietnam or at the front lines, wherever, and they were running out of meat for the grinder, running out of soldiers, then they would legally take healthy young men out of their homes and say, you got to do this. That's conscription or the draft. That's not the same as compulsory national service, okay? Now, some countries still practice national service. I know for a fact Israel does. Every Israeli, men and women, at the age of 18, I believe. I'll look it up, actually. Has to do 2 years in the army. And it's a pretty amazing thing. Now, because it's such a small country, I believe that is, the reason why. And I think it further on that, I think you also have to do, after you're done your obligated service, you have to be available to do National Guard for a while too. I think on weekends, a certain amount of weekends per year, and be called on in case of a war. And if soldiers are needed, civilians are armed. Japan used to be the same way. Japan because it's a small island, and Israel because it's a small surrounded country. Basically, okay, we're at war. Remember you did your army service? We're calling you back. So that's not the same thing as national service. To make a long story short, let's have a look here. Conscription in Israel. Conscription exists in Israel. This is courtesy of Wikipedia. Conscription exists in Israel for all Israeli citizens over the age of 18 who are Jewish, both genders. Arab citizens of Israel are not conscripted. That's very interesting. There are exceptions made on religion, physical, and psychological grounds. As of 2020, the normal length of compulsory service was 2 years and 6 months for men, some roles requiring an additional 4 months, and 2 years for women, with some roles requiring an additional 8 months. Okay? So, that's pretty cool. Not cool, I wouldn't want to do it. It was founded in 1949, just like national service was in Britain after the war, right? After World War II. It has an interesting thing. I thought that my father did national service, as I said. Growing up as a kid, I always pictures of my dad in the military, his uniform and stuff. I didn't know. I was very young. I thought my dad was in the war. I thought my dad was in World War II. You don't know dates and stuff. Now, my dad would have been 10 or 11 years old during World War II, But, put that together as a child. I just said, my dad was in the war. There's pictures of my dad with a gun. But then I realized as I got older that it was actually, because of national service. And, so, it really had a huge impact on young people's futures. They basically had no say. Excuse me, folks, I'm sorry. I'm a very fidgety person. It's a little uncomfortable, but I'm going to get a little more comfortable if no one minds. So yeah, essentially youth were given back some power in Britain in 1960 by not having to join the army. So yeah, all of a sudden you've got all these, kids that can make choices, go to college, university. And as I said, a lot of them that were artistic or just didn't want to do the rigors of regular academic work would go to an art school. So that's where they would meet others that were like-minded and form bands. Every major band you can think of has an art school student in it from the British era, British invasion era. And even more importantly, on top of that, the artists that designed classic album covers and logos and artwork and things for bands were also, you know, churned out by the art school scene in Britain. This is to me, a lot of you might be rolling your eyes and going, "Oh my God, really?" I think it's fascinating. I mean, think about what would have happened if national service had still been in effect after 1960. It's almost guaranteed there'd be no Beatles. Think about that. The effect on pop culture, never mind music. So there's almost certain that there'd be no Rolling Stones. I mean, let's have a look here. Okay. British Art College musicians. See if we can find a list. Okay, here, this is a pretty good first link, top link. The influence of British art schools on rock. Ray Davies of the Kinks, Eric Clapton, Ron Wood of the Stones and the Faces, Keith Richards of the Stones, Jeff Beck, Christine McVie of Fleetwood Mac, Ian Dury of Ian Dury and the Blockheads, Cat Stevens, Brian Ferry, David Bowie, all attended art school. Okay? Because they could. Now imagine if these people had not been able to realize their artistic ambitions and had been churned out by the grind of society in Britain and then that day and age, and had to go in the army, and then basically they would break down your hopes and dreams, and after that, the pressure is on. You have to become an adult. Rock and roll has been hugely affected by this. I find it very, very fascinating. Joe Strummer of The Clash, Pete Townsend, Pink Floyd, the whole band met at the Regent Street Polytechnic. Freddie Mercury, John Lennon, of course, as mentioned, Liverpool Art College. Like it's crazy to me. It's a really overlooked factor of the music that I and we love. Imagine a world with no Beatles, Stones, Who, Pink Floyd, David Bowie, Queen, and more. Isn't that nuts? And the British government's decision to get rid of national service had a direct hand in why we have the bands we know and love today. I think that is astounding. I'm very thankful for it. Now also, in closing, talk a little bit about the difference between national service and conscription, the draft. As I said, the draft is when you were post, your country needed you had to do your duty for your country. And speaking as a brother of a military veteran, my father was in the military, as I said, I support military. I don't support governments, wars for oil and war, but I support the veterans and present soldiers themselves. My friend Mike Hall, Kilgore, great guitar player, sergeant in the Air Force, retired. So you had the draft, which affected the music business in its own way too, because a lot of talented musicians were conscripted. Imagine how many potential legends might have been shot and killed in Vietnam, blown up, ran away to Canada. It just, and it also had a direct influence on the culture. Look at a song look at the Times. Let's talk about the Vietnam era. Look at the song Fortunate Son by CCR, which is directly about the draft and kids being drafted and taken from their homes and forced to serve in the military. I think that John Fogerty makes his stance pretty clear on that with the lyrics in that song. So it just makes me stop to think, and I'd like to think it would, if you're a fan of rock and roll as I am, like most of us are, if you take a second and stop and think about it, it's really, really fascinating and interesting. The Army had a massive effect on popular culture and music. And I never would have tied the two together without thinking about that. But I remember reading a book. I've had this thought for a couple of years, kind of percolating in the old frying pan up here. And then seeing Bill Wyman's post today about his national service made me go, oh, that's right. I thought I would walk into the pharmacy and I said, hey, you know what? I've done a ramble in a while because I haven't got fucking much to talk about. Let's see what the kids think, what people think about this. So, thank you for your time. Do me a favor. As always, please comment in the comments below. Any information you can add to what I've already talked about, what you think, your opinion of national service, your opinion of its effect on rock and roll, art college, and please like and share if you've enjoyed this. And the most important thing, as always, please subscribe to the channel. If you subscribe, it'll really help me the best way it can help me without spending a dime. So, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Rock and roll.